quick run through project managements. I call it project management guide. And as I said, I have 30 years of experience in project management. And let me start off maybe some key things based on my experience why projects go wrong. First of all, it's, of course, if you have unexperienced management team for project and operations, that is definitely not going to work. So it's no shame not to have all experience, but you as a founder, you need at least to get the right experience on board, either contracted or as co-founders or something like that. Secondly, one of the key reasons for failures as well, the scope or scope changes are not managed properly. I have seen very often that the scope is not clear, is vague, and especially if you have to deal with investors or people who invested in your operations, the scope is not clear, the expectations are not clear, and you're born to fail. Yeah, and then that leads nicely to the next step, is the missing involvement of key stakeholders. So make sure if you plan your project that you're not doing it in your, let's say, internal silo, but involve the key stakeholders you need. That can be banks, that can be investors. And first of all, at least in Europe, I would strongly recommend very early as well the local authorities, because they need to give you the permission to run the farm. And then thirdly, I think you need as well to very early involve the suppliers to get them into your planning and your customers into your planning, because in parallel while building your farm, you need to ensure that you're getting the right feed for your insects and things like that. And thirdly, again, very often people are very bullish and aggressive in their planning with short timelines, not planning any buffer for unexpected events. And frankly speaking, I haven't seen any project so far which has not to face some events and things happening which you have not planned and which may result in a delay of your project. So better plan some buffer into your project, and then you will not have the problem. And then thirdly, is the delivery responsibility. If it's not clear who's doing what in a project, that is not really helping. And as I said, related to another point is the missing risk and issue management as well for the project, as well for the running operations. And thirdly, I have seen so far that very often we are facing people coming from biology, people coming from other areas, and the business case at the end is still one of the most important parts. If you're not profitable in your insect business, you will have a problem later on, and everybody knows insect proteins are still competing with other protein sources. So keeping the costs in a manageable low level and getting the revenues in, making sure you have the right sales efforts in place to get the customers on board to buy your products, it's really critical. If you are looking for an investor, and that is not for smaller farms, but if you're looking for an investor for larger farms, my experience, and I've been working and helping insect farmers to find investors, there are two main criteria an investor would look like. And I put the most important first, which are the founders and the management team. The founders need to be really right, and there need to be people who have the right expertise and all the expertise you need, and I mentioned that in the slide, and they need to have shown some kind of, let's say, traction, a proven track record. So just having burned a lot of money without having, let's say, any tangible, measurable, proven results, in a sense of maybe early successful, already a smaller farm, or making some first revenues, all that will help. But at the very end, I can say an investor would accept a business idea which is not totally perfect, let's say 80% or 70%, will still go for an investment if the management team is convincing. So otherwise, it will not work. If the management team is not convincing, you might have the best business idea, nobody will invest. So that's overall the stuff. Business idea, of course, it's the idea itself. It needs to be something that is to a certain degree scalable and not easy to imitate by others. and you have a certain market size, market share you're aiming for. So, and then as well, I think, which is great if you have already some LOIs or some agreements in place with key suppliers and customers, which makes it more probable that your project will be successful. So, going through the key phases of a project. And you will see the presenters have that shaped differently, but overall you will find the same stuff in the projects, and I will only quickly run through. I think you start off, let's say, I call it shaping, in the sense of getting a high-level idea of the project, validating the project, understanding, which species you will go for, whether this black soldier fly, a cricket, or mealworm, or whatever kind of insect. Understand roughly what you need to invest and to get a rough understanding of the project. That is really something before you take millions in the hand and start a planning session, which is already cost intensive. You may better have a first step, which I would call a shaping phase, which goes on the high level, let's say, plan on the high level costs, on the high level location, equipment needs, and things like that. And then in the next step, if you have agreed on that, I think you should have a first idea on the planning phase, which then goes down into much more details. At that stage, you really need to start talking with the local authorities, hopefully based on a planning and some documents you have created in the shaping phase. You do a more detailed designs on technology, processing, air conditioning, building, all kind of that. And then, of course, you need to start as well talking and identify substrate suppliers and buyers for your end products. So you have an understanding, which quantities they can provide. And very often we have seen some projects failing because they were not able to get the substrates. Usually that should be close to you, and that should be substrates that are not underlying a major, let's say, a cost risk, while, today you calculate with a certain cost for substrates, and next year they double the price and your business is no longer profitable. All that we had already in the past, facing and causing big problems for insect businesses. And then referring back, you need to define your management team and make sure that you have the right people on board. So normally, if you go for a larger farm, I'm not talking for a smaller farm, that could be a one-man show. But if you go for a more larger farm, you need to have a management team in place. So somebody focusing on the biology and the processes, somebody focusing on finance and planning, and maybe as well somebody focusing on business development and sales. And this is one important thing as well, a hint. Very often we see business cases where the whole sales effort is not planned in, and that can easily go up to 20 to 25% of your overall costs in a sense of market development, sales development, and things like that. Luckily, good message today, and we talked about that in the last webinar. Currently, it looks like there's more demand than supply on insect proteins, so that should be, if you are stringent and follow up, or a no-burner to get the right people and the right customers in place. And then, of course, you need to come up with a project organization, a financing plan, and agreements in place. And then that's actually really the project delivering, in the delivery phase, you actually really deliver the project. You create the building. I think very important as well is an ongoing communication to your key stakeholders, to keep the investors and the public authorities and your business partners, meaning suppliers and buyers, in the loop. So in case there is a move in timelines or milestones, they are aware in an early point of time, or if you're quicker than planned, then of course your suppliers and buyers need to be as well aware that you're delivering earlier. So make sure you keep the communication in place. And then, of course, besides the technical delivery, installing the facility, the machinery, and all that, you need as well to complete your team, meaning not only the management team that is already in place, but you need to recruit some more staff and people who actually help you in running the business, because even if it's fully automated, you will need still some people who maintain and clean or fix problems. Okay. And at the last step, of course, of the delivery phase is basically the acceptance of the installation, where you jointly with your partners will go through and make sure everything is in place, so you can start and say go. The run organization, it's mainly basically keeping your organization, your production running in a stable manner, to ensure that the quality controls are in place, to avoid disruptions, and to maintain your machinery. Again, we have seen business cases where people have not properly calculated the whole maintenance and quality costs in their business case. So please keep in mind that you need to address that already in the planning and make sure you have the people in the place who do actually the work, or the contracts in place if this is about maintenance. And then, of course, after you've been you're running a stable organization, you may think about increasing and scaling up your business. So again, you jump back to the initial planning phase and will start further planning, while in parallel you make sure your costs and revenues are closely tracked, and that you maybe realize some more opportunities to reduce costs by improving your processes. The main lever actually is really the process itself, and then the technology will follow the process. But if you can eliminate manual steps in your process by automation or by changing the process overall, so the step is not needed, that can have a major impact on a positive impact on your cost base. So that's so far about my part.